Welcome to the AI Valley podcast. Welcome to the AI Valley podcast. Welcome to the AI Valley podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome to the AI Valley podcast. I know it's been a while and we've missed you, but I hope you had a good set of holidays. Just in case, belated Christmas and a great New Year. I hope all of you guys have a great New Year going forward, and we wish you all the best.
Hi, and this is Vikas, and wish you a great new year. We have had a amazing time traveling with family, friends, work, and a lot of things have been busy. Not just work, but also the way things are shaping in both, AI and in general. And today we have a very special episode because we have with us a very special guest between us, Kunal. Kunal is not just a dear friend, but he's one. I've seen a lot of people who are passionate about hardware and accumulating vintage computers and continuously building capacity for their personal usage. And he's someone who's been not just passionate about computer hardware post AI, but he's been all around. So given the fiasco that's happening in the world of the DRAMs and the AI build out, we thought there has been everywhere we go, we hear people talk about. So we thought to bring a very special episode about hardware winter and everything that's going crazy in the world of hardware. So welcome, Kunal. How are you?
Well, Vikas and Sachin, thank you so much for inviting me here. Really appreciate it.
Actually, you know what, folks? I have a very interesting story to share. A couple of months back, I think maybe slightly more than a couple, I think 3 or 4 odd months back, I was trying to build my own PC, and we'll come to the
Not
story.
just a PC,
Yeah, not
but
just
a
a-
workstation.
Yeah, a proper workstation. And I guess all thanks to the man here, because a lot of the components that are in that workstation today were given by him, suggested by him. In fact, the nice little 4090 that sits in and does all the work for me, that's also gifted. I mean, not gifted, but he gave it to me. But I think, here's why I thought, we should have this discussion today, right? Because obviously with the workstation, I was looking at RAM. We went ahead, did a purchase, and it was such a funny story because we went ahead and purchased these 4 sticks, and the seller gave me a good rate, which we thought was a good rate. All of a sudden, then we decided, you know what, we don't need such a beefy station, and we wanted to return that back, but the seller was not ready to do it. And
By the way, this was 64 DDR5 ECC memory.
yes,
Yeah.
4 sticks of it, right? So you can imagine. And we wanted to return it, and I'm so thankful that the person didn't take it back, because now this is definitely the discussion of today. Like, look at what we did 4 months back, and the world has changed in the next 4 months.
Do you remember the cost at which you bought each stick?
I mean, yeah, 90K for all the 4.
All the 4, right?
90K INR.
INR.
Right now, if you go
That's
look,
about 100K.
$1K.
and right now, if you look at it, a single stick of RAM is almost $300, 64 GB.
Yeah. So I think the biggest.
Sorry, not $300. $1,500 is a single
Wow.
stick of 64 GB RAM.
So Kunalji, I think the biggest AI event, I think last year was when Sam Altman walked into Seoul and walked out with 40% of the world's DRAM supply. So in many words, he was playing 4D chess to block everyone else from hyperscaling. And the story goes is OpenAI signed agreements with Samsung and SK Hynix for up to 900,000 DRAM wafers per month, right? Because it seems like neither company, both SK Hynix and Samsung, knew that what the deal other were, signing, and Samsung assumed that they were giving OpenAI a meaningful allocation. So did SK Hynix, and by the time both realized, they collectively handed over nearly half of global DRAM output, right? And so to your To your point, a 32 GB DDR5 that sold in $95 in September is $400 in December, right? That's about four times the price. And obviously, gamers and PC builders and general consumers are hating it. But I think we've had a lot of discussion around this. The implications go way beyond this, right? Because this hardware winter is going to last for maybe a year, 2 years, 4 years. Nobody knows, right? So what's your thought on how this will play out in everywhere there is memory, which is your PCs, your cars, handhelds, consoles, right? How's the world of computer hardware is going to look like?
It is going to be quite difficult because, as you know, memory is everywhere, not just computers, but also in smart TVs, watches, and even smaller things like, say, a microcontroller. So, memory is quite a fundamental building block, which essentially the impact will be a lot more universal. And there is not even what you call a deadline on when this will be over. So nobody is talking about standing up new fabs. And the manufacturers of these companies, there are only three companies, SK Hynix, Samsung, and Micron. They are all projecting that things will be like this till 2028. And you wouldn't expect a lot from these manufacturers anyway. There have been many cases in which these companies have colluded to price fix RAM itself. And now they have such an amazing opportunity that if they would have wanted, they could stand up new fabs, but there is no intention on their part. And they all are shutting down consumer businesses. So, for example, you would have seen Crucial, which is the consumer brand of Micron, are being shut down because they want to focus on enterprise market. And as you know, enterprise market typically is higher margin market. And because of all of that, what they're expecting, the trend is, hey, why do you need to own your hardware? You can just rent it. And this impacts a lot of hobbyists or anybody who wants to build a system. Because if you look at the prices of RAM, because you remember, right, you build out the entire system for, I think, 150,000. Now RAM alone will be like 130,000 in that price component. That's very
Absolutely. I
different.
think for a price of a RAM stick now, an entire PC would have been built in 6 months. That's very clear. See, what's most surprising to me, right? And when I went through the details, right, there is a sort of a second school of thought about artificial scarcity. Because if you look into the details of the deal that Sama had done with SK Hynix and Samsung, is these are to buy unfinished memory modules, right? To people who want to understand what unfinished memory model. So, which basically means that these unfinished memory chips are not allocated to a specific DRAM standard, right? So it's unclear to me how they will finish them into RAM stick, into HBM. Right now it seems like these wafers will just be stockpiled into warehouses, right? I don't understand if
There
this
could be, right. So typically the same DRAM can be made into an HBM, can be made into DDR, can be made into GDDR, which is the graphics memory. So see, there could be price collusion, but I wouldn't say that this is artificial scarcity, because if you are a supplier and somebody already gives you a contract that this is the DRAM I want, then you will block it, right? And if you don't have that, then you can't allocate it. And the thing is, Sam has purchased, or because these are enterprise deals, right? HBM or any enterprise, yeah, the margins will be a lot higher.
Yeah.
So you would essentially do that instead of provisioning, say, RAM sticks, particularly these consumer RAM sticks. So they will not look at that. So the fundamental issue is this: all of these RAM types ultimately require the same manufacturer. The bottleneck is essentially there. The materials are same.
Okay. So now tell me, as a hobby PC builder, and how does this impact you personally, right? Because you've been buying hardware at a very sustained rate at different price points, right? Now, are you still buying? Are you not buying? What advice do you have for PC builders? Should they wait this out? Should we buy stabilizers?
No, I wouldn't stabilizer. Sorry. So I wouldn't recommend waiting this out at all. Let's break this problem, right? If you have a need, right, you want this to actually finish your job or complete something meaningful, then you should go acquire that RAM no matter the cost, because it is only going to increase. It is as simple as that. The second thing is, it is just nice to have. It is not critical, but you are probably using it for gaming or some other purpose. Then you have to look, can you make do with the hardware that you have? If the answer is yes, then use it. And one of the side effects that you will see of this winter, because it's a long winter, software, which we'll talk about later, right? That will also be optimized to run in smaller amount of RAM memory itself. So my recommendation is, if you need it, you need to get it now.
Okay. And I was looking at another list of, obviously RAM is burning, but what is almost burning is also SSDs and small pre-built PC component and Radeon GPUs, right? Because as you're aware, AMD doesn't bundle RAM in their BOM kits to like the Nvidia does, right? So the RX 9070 GRE 16 GB, a lot of these products have been cancelled because of the lack of RAM, right? And similarly, Xbox, we're not hearing any news. And
Yeah. Next version of all these lower margin GPUs, I think 5060s and 5070s, they are cutting production. They are not bundling the VRAM with it. And they are looking to sell more and more of these higher cost professional workstation series of GPUs, because there they can make margin.
saying that if we have to plan out a PC build out, even though RAM is burning, we should go ahead and do so, because things are going
No,
to.
definitely. Look at second hand market. If you can see some deal, I still see on ebay.com or on various classified sites, whether it is OLX, or whether it is a bunch of other sites that you see, you will see older generation, the Xeon workstations or AMD workstation with DDR4 memory can still be have at like relatively lower cost. If you don't have that, see, the point is this: the price is not going to go down in like next year or so. It is going to continue for a long.
Okay, I have one question. Like, say I have a bunch of RAMs, over years, just like you, we have collected a lot of hardware. So should we book profit and sell out, or is it a good time to sell old laptops, with those DDR4s and 5s?
It depends on what profession you are in. So if there is no need and you had like a lot of RAM sitting in attic and you want to maximize profit, then you can probably wait it out even further, because like we said, right, RAM prices are not coming down yet. But obviously, like stock market, is difficult to time these things. So, but yes, they are pretty high now. But there is no way of saying that it will not increase further.
So Kunal ji, see, generally, what we have noticed, right, this has been cyclical in a way, right? This has happened in the past as well. But do you think this cycle is any different? Do you feel this will play out a lot more longer, or do you feel there is genuine reasons why companies are doing what they're doing?
This cycle is quite different than what had happened previously. So, for example, if you remember when the hard drive prices went up, it was because of the flood in Thailand. And then these manufacturers essentially harped on that, and the prices were up for a long time. The DRAM prices also went up, but because mostly due to collusion.
Also in COVID, I think
Yeah.
when there's a supply chain.
This is supply, it's like
Yeah,
too much demand, and also the supply chain is not moving as efficiently, especially China being closed. But this time, the math is like fairly straightforward and simple. And the way it is look like is, folks are building data centers and they need more. And one way to look at it is, we spoke about these classified websites like Craigslist or eBay, you do not see ampere generation of GPUs in those marketplace assets. You will not find a lot of A100s. When A100 came, it was like 4, 5, 6 years ago. Those are still being utilized. On top of that, Jensen Huang keeps releasing new GPUs. You would have seen in the recent keynote at CES, he has announced Vera Rubin. And even though Rubin, and before that, you had Blackwell, Hopper, they were improving massively. So, for example, Blackwell was 10x of Hopper. Rubin is 10x of Blackwell. But do you see any of those GPUs? Jensen would say in the keynote that people couldn't give it away even if they would have wanted. And this is essentially the proof that market will eat up any amount of GPU that you give them.
Right.
Right? And that's why it's good to be invested in NVIDIA.
Okay, this is not we telling it.
Right. So my point essentially is that this demand is there. There is a RAM, the GPU, these newer graphics card. They started with 80 GB on the enterprise side, now then went to 150, 180, and now these newer chips are even more, right? So I don't see it slowing at all, unless AI doesn't work out, which is not
on
the
that
case.
point, I think, and Sachin and I, we're actually discussing this earlier today, and this is a question for Sachin. Like just let's play that scenario out. Do you think this shortage is going to lead to a different paradigm shift in software, where the memory hog browsers applications who have been very liberal in their RAM usage are going to take a new look, where there are new compression algorithms which offload their sort of RAM usage onto the disk, or handle their memory usage, maybe Chrome Light or something like that, where every browser or every application becomes extremely cautious and judicious about their memory usage, right? It can drive a lot of more new creative. Do you think we are at a point that people can use these AI coding and use the next wave of these improvements to build these memory efficient softwares?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think that's an interesting point you've raised. I think, look, every challenge is an opportunity, right? So I think where we see a challenge, there could be someone else who's looking at it as an opportunity, and they may try to build something that circumvents this problem. In fact, that was actually quite coincidentally was the question that I wanted to ask Kunal as well. Is that what happens to developing countries, right? Because while we look a lot towards the West and we see that countries over there will be able to afford some of the outcomes of high priced memory, there are also countries on the other side where it may not be so affordable, right? Like, because and memory is in every device that we use. So I think this is going to play out on the consumer durable segment as well. People may have to buy more expensive hardware for some time, more expensive durables for some time. But I think there will be innovation that will happen in the software side. But what do you think about that, right? How will this play out for countries that are now just beginning to afford some of the most expensive
Do I
durables?
wait for another year before I
Yeah.
upgrade my iPhone or phones?
So India, in a way, has leapfrogged US or other developed countries in some adoption factor. So, for example, gaming is much bigger on phones here compared to other countries. We have prices impacting these computers and servers more. Phones hasn't happened yet. It will take time. So I'll say general public may or may not see it quite as we do, because we typically are a lot more invested. The Western folks will also see, because they generally participate with a lot more devices like this. Software will definitely get updated to reflect this change. As you'd have seen, like an NES game, like 1988, you could put an entire game of Mario with like 11 levels in just think a few KBs. And I'm not saying it was 3D and all, but my point
right.
is you lay out a limitation and you can essentially live in it. There is some sort of laziness right now in today's software that you will see everywhere. These websites, you have these powerful JavaScript compilers, right? Even though you are just looking for some interactivity, a way to know information when you want. Those things are just fancy things that may or may not require happen. We may go back to native software a lot more because they are a lot more efficient, energy efficient software. And even if you look at, even before this RAM thing happened, all the releases that happened, they always look for something called performance per watt, right? Performance per watt was like essentially on the energy part, right? Now people can look at things like performance per memory.
Yeah.
Like for this amount of memory, what do you do? There are a lot of algorithms. You remember, right? A lot of people hate answering these lead code type of questions in the
Space
interview,
complexity.
right? Space complexity. Like, hey, do you store ON or ON square? People will
Yeah.
care about those things, right?
Correct,
So
correct.
in all this negativity, the good thing that comes out of it is people will care about memory uses of their software again.
And also, I believe it'll reflect in the choice of backend frameworks as well. I just, reading, there are languages like WebAssembly which offload the compute from server to browser and stuff like that. So there'll be a lot more distributed paradigm where, since I can't maybe horizontally scale on expensive, because it's not a commodity compute anymore. So probably I'm going to, serve your request and offload as much compute on these devices. In fact, one of the things that Kunal has been doing after this DRAM and NANDs have become the new oil, is he's started to sort of put his focus on acquiring these small form factor devices. And I think one of the interesting takes that he has is, as model becomes smaller and smaller parameter model, even a 7B models are getting a lot more. It would be possible to run some of those things on a edge device, right? and some of these, and given the RAM crisis, they would like a nimble GPD box might be a server grade in a hardware winter, right? So I think these things are definitely going to show up in, not just in the play. Kunal, you mentioned gaming. I think what worries me most is the quietness that Valve have, or because with a lot of fanfare, I think about 2 months back before all of these blew out, right? They announced their Steam machine, right? Obviously, it is unclear and unknown whether they pre-bought the RAM before announcing their much hyped Steam machine, or if they already have a stockpile of ample supply of DDR5. If not, then I'm sure the Steam machine launch should be affected as well, because like every gamer, I believe I'm very actively waiting for that device. But if the supply could dry up temporarily at some point, they'll wait for the prices to drop.
But man, I still think it's a good thing because Steam is more than a box, right? So Steam's most of the thing that they have done is on the software side. For the first time in the history, they have built out a platform that stands tall in front of Windows and can be a viable gaming platform today. So there is a distribution of Steam called Bazite, and it runs Windows game because of all the work that Valve has done in terms of optimizing their stack, providing compatibility layer for DirectX games to run on Linux. Now, what that gets you in this world of this, hardware winter where RAM is not available, because Windows is a lot more resource heavy. There is a lot of processes that Windows itself will consume. And time again, many reviewers have proved that the games written for Windows, not written for Linux, work better on Linux using Steam's layer that they have built than it will be on a native platform. This was unheard of. Like you would achieve this kind of performance. So my point being is, if you have a system which is resource constrained, soon it is much better to install Linux and use something like Bazite or Steam to run games than this. Of course, box, we do not know what has happened there, but you would have seen the pricing that they were attempting, right? So I think it's a good thing that Steam exists and it will be more popular in this hardware constrained world.
Sure, absolutely. What else, Sachin? What's keeping you excited? I think we've been working on a lot of interesting things around. We will have another next episode coming soon, something on context graphs. I think there has been a lot of sort of chatter on X post Anshu Garg, and I think there's some post. So I think everybody sort of have understood the need for a universal context graph as a product for enterprise. So we'll be talking about it soon. In fact, we've been thinking deeply, and I hope the next episode will be on that. So Kunal, I think tell me, as a hardware collector, are you enjoying that you're sitting on a bunch of like you have more RAM than net worth of a lot of people? How do you feel about it?
Give it away, man. So if I were a trader, I would be super happy, right? Because I would just sell the stuff and make money. But because I have this, what I would say, a weird desire to just wander on, just even looking at my RAM sticks, those give me so much joy. Keep in mind, even if they are not powered on, I really like it. So I'll not sell it, but I do find it very, very stupid. And that I have these two Threadripper Pro boards that I'm not able to populate because it requires 8 DDR5 sticks. And no
Wow.
matter how made it up. So that's the downside because I can't acquire more. That's why I'm unhappy. But I'm not very happy that I have so much. So I'm like human that way.
But interestingly, I think this is also a CES week and a lot going on in CES. One of the things that caught my attention, and I didn't know if it was timed like that, but Jensen released a brand new memory storage platform this week at CES conference. It's called as which is equipped with the 4 Bluefield 4 DPUs, right? Each DPU supporting 150 TB of capacity, right? And this basically is tailor-made for NVIDIA's AI server rack. What my point is, even though there seems to be a shortage on the back of the build out, right? The innovation on the next generation of AI hardware doesn't seem to be stopping, right? So which sort of gives me sort of a hope that I think a lot of people will sort of solve this problem. I think this maybe. So what's your best bet? would you, Kunal, do you think the prices will ever go back to their original price, or this is the new reality?
Man, I really wish that it could go. One of the person where I buy RAM from, first I spoke, he said 30,000 for 64 GB. I didn't buy. Then he said 60,000. Then he said 90,000. These days he says 1.5 lakh. So I don't know when that will go down. But I would like to comment on the thing that you have mentioned about what Jensen said. One of the things that NVIDIA announced was that these large language memory are heavy on the KV context. KV, the context that is stored in a KV cache. That, so if your GPU, if you take 60 GB for model memory, then almost 20 GB is kept there. So while Jensen is doing for the enterprise world, a lot of people will enjoy that, but there has been a lot of effort in the open source world as well, where NVMe offload is being thought of as one way to basically store these cache on a very fast storage system. So I'm excited about that. There is a work going on in llama.cpp to get that going. It doesn't support it yet. There is some frameworks here and there that do it. So like it always happens, right? Whenever constraint comes, you will see a bunch of innovation happening, and this will be like one of those things.
Yeah, one thing which I was super upset was I've been following up the sort of release of GeForce 6 series, which is looks like the GeForce RTX 60 series graphic card would only come by the second half of 2027, which is
not bad, man. I think the press is essentially making this too much. Even if you look at the time difference between 3000 and 4000 series, or 4000 and 5000 series, there is huge difference because NVIDIA is not that much interested about game.
You're right, but NVIDIA themselves announced RTX 50 Super Series card.
Yeah, you are right
so
about
that is also delayed,
yes,
right?
yes. So the Super Series got cancelled purely because of the memory.
Correct. So a lot of it's not. So I am definitely, but I think one silver lining is the Rubin GR20X series, which is essentially designed for AI. I've also been reading that they also have a version that released this year that can be used for gaming. So I believe there are definitely the timeline changes and lots happening in this and from an investment point of view, I think let's if we just from a pure stock surge point of view, some of the companies who are into building these like Micron, SK Hynix, Samsung, do you think they're going to have the run similar to what NVIDIA or some other AI stocks had in, say, last couple of years?
Man, as you say that, right? I, knowing very well in advance, I didn't put any money in Micron. But yes, it looks like they are only going up because there is nobody else, right? Again, we don't give stock advice, but what I have seen is the market in general is still expanding. The day Nvidia reports, something that is not huge growth, only then we'll see something turning the other way around. If Nvidia keeps selling GPUs, why would you not need everything else? Why would you not need memory? Why would you not need SSD? Why would you not need power? Even if you look at something like Delta Power, which manufactures world's like 80% of power supply, they are going up. They're like significantly up. Same goes for every other component that exists. So the whole supply chain is being taken together to new heights.
Yeah, but basic question, and I don't know, I think I probably have to read up more about this, but is making memory such a hard thing? Why is China not? Why isn't this, like I understood this being a hard problem about, semiconductors and certain nanometers in chip fabrication, but I don't think the same amount of complexity should exist for memory as well, right? So why aren't some of these mass market products? Why do we have dependency on just few companies?
Maybe just as in addition to that question as well, look, when GPUs started becoming such a big deal, that gave rise to other companies or other architectures of sorts. Right? And there have been many examples in the past where CISC was outdone in a way by RISC. New architectures came. The GPUs were great at what they were doing, but then obviously Grok and Google showed that there are other alternatives as well, and NVIDIA has shown its interest in that space as well. So do you think there's we'll also see a moment like that in memory where suddenly something will change and something new will come up.
But Sachin, if you dig deep on what you
Mm.
said, and if you look at those alternative architectures, they're not there, man. x86 essentially won, and the only other alternative is ARM
Yeah.
and nobody else. And ARM only became alternative when Apple essentially put their might behind it. If you look at GPUs, NVIDIA is making all the money. Who else is there? Only Google's TPU is there. But
Yeah.
TPU, no, you cannot own it. You can only rent it. Everything else is so distant. In the PC market, people always standardize too much. There has been work going on to create new types of RAM. But think about it, man. The amount of money that it takes to move to a new architecture is so high. The resistance is so much that people, the catch will be this, right? Either you optimize this versus move to a new architecture. It'll feel like the same amount of work, but
Right.
no buying new hardware. On to Vikas's question, right? DRAM making is not easy. If this were easy, you would have more people making it. It needs like extreme precision to shrink these capacitor transistor cells which struggle to hold charges as they get smaller. And they require constant refreshing. You know, these days the RAMs runs at like 6,000 and even 7,000 MTs. And that's why the news that you would have seen, right? That China getting some information on how Samsung creates RAM is such a big deal, and they protect it with their, everything that they have.
Did you know SanDisk stock jumped nearly 30%
Wow.
in one day? So I'm just looking at look at this data, right? SanDisk stocks in 1 year has given 882% return. Now beat that, and they don't even build RAM. This is just NAND.
Because NVMe prices have gone up, na? So
Yeah.
the
Right.
demand for NVMe is following that. All these models, they load data at very, very high rate. All the models, even at my home, I'm not storing those on regular HDDs. They're on SSDs because it is a must have. They go hand in hand. And in hindsight, man, it looks so natural that this will happen. And I'm now cursing myself to not pick up on this. Man, I should have picked up on everything like GPU and memory. And I think, you know what? There is a component of networking also, which is going up, but you won't see that separately.
That is data center networking.
Because you will not see that separately because NVIDIA is the largest networking equipment manufacturing after their acquisition of Mellanox.
Nice. All right. So I think we have had a lot of discussions, and we left you with a lot of questions than you had because we don't have all the answers. But definitely, it's an interesting time. Any closing comments, Sachin, Kunal?
Yeah, I think look, we are entering a very interesting phase, right? I wouldn't call it all dull and gloomy like the media makes it out to be. I think there's a little, there is some sunshine on the other side. So while there could be some unrest in some near time future, but I think it will settle down, right? And things will get better. So it may look a little difficult for now. And given that memory touches a lot of aspects of what we do, it touches a lot of aspects of the hardware we consume. But I think, like everything that has been cyclical, whenever there's, and I think Kunal said it the best, right? Whenever there's constraint, that has given rise to innovation. So I think we have to embrace this cycle because I think this cycle is what is going to give us a very novel set of innovations that I think will really help us collectively as a species, right? So I think we should just look forward to this. Kunal, to you.
Man, we were discussing Micron, and in 1 month they have gone from 250 to 340.
It's just the face of regret of not having bought the stock.
True. And I have been knowing this since December. December it was 228. Now
Yeah,
it
in
is
fact,
339.
Interestingly, Kunal was the first person who told me about these crazy RAM prices, and this was long before it was in media.
True.
Right. This was in early November that he's been telling me. And first, when I thought, okay, come on, that can't be that bad. Maybe I thought it's just a little jump in the price of pre-loved hardware, but I never knew. And every meeting now we go work where people, especially who are in the data centers and enterprise, this has been the discussion point. People are everybody knows that this is a new reality.
So what I will recommend is essentially what I have said before. If you need it, buy it now because it is only going to become expensive. Look at second-hand market as well if you can. And that's about it. Like Sachin said, there is enough and more interesting stuff that you will have. Anything that you do in this domain will be a lot more appreciated by others as well. So if you have projects in mind or things in mind that will reduce memory consumption or use memory in an interesting way, people will really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Kunal, and we'll do a lot many episodes with Kunal, Sachin, and Vikas. And thank you for listening to us. And as always, everything that's spoken about here represents our own opinions and doesn't represent that of our employers. With that, have a great day. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the AI Valley podcast.